somebody who's taking a role, and it's a roll call. First up is the discussion of the future town hall site. And I believe, Steve, you're going to lead us through this discussion?
Yes, sir.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
I think so. You know, and so just kind of going back to the concept of Economic Development Advisory Board, the town council in its strategic planning process laid out various different things for us to tackle as a community, as an economic development agency for the next fiscal year. One of those things that was outlined in that strategic plan was looking at the town hall site. And I know we've talked about this in the past, potentially with an RFP, kind of split out a draft RFP, but this was kind of really to start evaluating what we really want to do with the property. And then the concept then is if we kind of discuss and figure out what we want to do, then how we get to, we want to get to some type of process for redeveloping the site, whether it's an RFP or going through that process or an RFQ. That's really what we wanted to discuss. And so I just wanted to open this up, this conversation. Obviously, the site being pretty critical, very visible, having more of a public conversation and getting public consensus on what we really would like to see there as a community, and it's going to move the needle both for economic development, but also something that the community wants to see and can enjoy. So that's the kickoff of the conversation here. And so just to talk about kind of how this fits in. And so the process for this actually started back when we had the ULI ASTAP discussions. I think they started talking about opportunities for the community where they can make inroads to better development, commercial development, retail development. And one of the things they had to discuss then was the idea of this particular site being more of a retail site versus being the town hall site. And as we started to look into kind of how that could happen, it's really difficult when you don't have a redevelopment area. And so we did go through all that process, and we've identified that both in the Village Center strategic plan and in the redevelopment plan as being something that we needed to explore as far as being able to redevelop and revitalize the town center. And so this kind of gives you an idea of what the redevelopment area is about. And the one thing that I just want to point out in the redevelopment area, when a town that's a statutory town typically sells property or disposes of property, you have to go through the state prescribed process, and that usually goes through some kind of public auction process. And in a public auction process, you're just at the whims pretty much of whatever anybody bids on it and decides to do with the property. Once you dispose of it, they get it. When we go through the redevelopment process, we actually have the opportunity to set all the terms that we'd like to see. Then we would go out and solicit the type of project we want to see. And then we have the ability to say yea or nay whether or not we want to move forward on that. So yes, you go through the competitive process, but you're going through it in a way that's different than what's prescribed in the law, because the law allows us to do it on a redevelopment law this way. So that is the nuance to this that's a little bit different. And as you make that evaluation, your evaluation doesn't necessarily have to be 100% solely based on the economics of the transaction. Your economics and the value can be created in a lot of various different ways. You can look at it through sales tax that gets created. You can look at it as jobs get created. There's a lot of different factors. You can even just say aesthetically, or it's going to help out values. There's a lot of ways that you can start attributing what that value is. And so that's part of the conversation we're going to be having as well as we walk through this is, what value do we want to see to get out of this? How do we want to evaluate it from an economics perspective? And then how are we going to do that when we set up any evaluation process? And I've kind of walked through this already. And then so what I'd like to start doing is kicking this off is really start setting the expectations of what we want to see there. And I want the Economic Development Advisory Group to kind of be the tip of the spear as far as this conversation goes. And then we can discuss kind of how we want to vet this conversation through the community to be able to seek other public input, whether we have open houses, however we want to do that. And as we look at these things, so site site use and compatibility with other uses in the town center. What kind of uses do we want to see here? Do we want to see mixed use? Was residential okay? The site design expectations. Are we going to stick to the existing development standards? Do we want to create new development standards that are specific to the site? Are there things that we can do here that set the tone for what we want to do? And I kind of think of this site as the keystone site, that we can do things here that will be the example for how we want everything else in town center to be. And this is kind of about how we look through this as an example. And then we got to figure out what we want to do with town hall, because that's obviously we have a function there, and that function needs to exist. The preference for the city is to own its own real estate when it comes to the town hall. Obviously, we'd have to think that through and look at the various different options for us to be able to accommodate that. And so we'll walk through those options as well. And then again, I talked about the project economics already, and we'll just have to kind of figure out how we want those economics to look.
Steve, is it the case that the town hall was one of the first buildings that was built by the three developers when they created the town, and that it was across from the landmark sundial, and that it was used really as the sales office? Is that true?
That's correct. So it was the original sales office.
So it was a sales office to get this whole development going.
Yeah.
And then it modified itself into the town hall.
Right. And if you think about it, like if you go to a model home community, and they got model homes, those model homes are always going to be, at the end of the day, the ones that they sell for the most value. They may not be in the best places, best lots. In this case, what they did is they held out to say, okay, this is going to be, actually, this is one of the most centralized locations. And so when you think about the town center, when they envisioned the town center originally, that was the center of town center. So if you look at a map, you can see it almost looks like an eye. And it's kind of hard to see in here, but the roadway actually comes up and makes like an eye that comes around. And so everything on the other side of Cave Creek Road, where you see the condos and some of the housing over here, was originally planned to be a lot of different things. So if you look at the original deed restrictions, they allowed for motel, hotel, miniature golf, bowling alley, clubs, I mean, all kinds of things. This was supposed to be the business, that was supposed to be the fun, and that's why you've got Savannah, and so they kind of played into that concept, and so it was going to be a mixed use area of a little bit higher density of a lot of different things, but at the same time, it was okay if some of it turned into residential. And so if you look at like Carefree Flats, that originally was a motel, and now it's apartments. And so you did have some of this motel development that occurred. Trailer parks was included in there, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
So the point I'm making is that when this building was built 50 years ago as a sales office, it made sense because that's where the sundial was and that's where the development was going to be. So the fact that it's there really is kind of a haphazard. The town hall doesn't need to be there. It can be in any number of different places, but it happens to be sitting on a very, very valuable piece of property that maybe can be used in a better way. Would that be a good way to?
I think the other way to look at it is it meant to be a temporary building? Yes.
Okay.
I think they meant it to be the crown jewel of the town center. That's why I was going, this crown jewel in the center of town center, at the end of the day, when they're successful, they'll be able to sell this for a lot of money and kind of work their way to that. The building itself is nothing special, it's been added on to, it's been changed and modified. Yeah, I totally agree with that statement. And then this is the site we're kind of specifically looking at. As we've already talked through, and we were looking in the circulation discussion, the concept of abandoning Sunshine Way as a roadway and incorporating it into this site. I did lasso in Carefree Drive into this. Carefree Drive more than likely isn't going to go away, but maybe as we look at how this site gets redeveloped, or if it's to be redeveloped, how Carefree Drive is a part of that. Is there a way that it can be done differently? Is there an opportunity for parking strategies as we kind of look at this more holistically? And then even that, looking at the site adjacent to it, that's privately owned as you head northwest, and that's the vacant property there. And so while that's not in the site boundary because we don't own it, maybe there's an opportunity to work proactively or progressively with the property owner there, or cooperatively.
Are the parking spaces on the south side of that parcel part of the parcel, or part of Sunshine Way?
Now, Sunshine Way is its own right of way.
Okay, but the parking spaces that are on the south side of that, you have them looped into Sunshine Way.
Yep, that's all part of the town right of way.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Yeah, but I think Peter's asking is that it's not part of the actual parcel, but it is town property.
It is town property.
It's town property, but it's not part of the two parcels that contain the town hall building, and then the second parcel is the vacant parking area that town hall uses.
Well, it looks like there's more than O2A.
Yeah, these are just the same numbers. Yeah, so this is one parcel.
I can't see.
This is a second parcel right here.
Whatever you're pointing to, it doesn't come out.
It's not coming out.
I'm not
Oh,
seeing anything.
Oh, there you go.
so this is a parcel here,
Oh, okay,
and this is its own parcel here.
okay, and
This is all
that's all
separate,
municipal property?
separate right away. Yep.
But the town owns this site that we're talking about.
Yes. And so the idea is then, can we do better utilization? So if you were to clear all of this, is there a way to better lay the entire site out that's more efficient and effective? And how much on-site parking are we going to want to have versus the total amount of development? And if we put development in there, how do we account for parking? That's going to be a part of this conversation, which means that this site could become a little bit more important, and the other parking conversations we're having become more important as how we look at overall parking in the town center site, period.
I think ultimately, if we could turn Easy Street into a walking promenade, abolish the cars on Easy Street in the circle, from Athens down to English Tea Room, and make it a walking promenade that connects the sundial, the cactus garden, and the shops in one continuous, beautiful line with planters, trees in the middle, fountains, just like what Santa Monica did with 3rd Street Promenade. The 3rd Street section of Santa Monica was a rundown street, and it was turned into a walking promenade, and it became very, very popular and quite beautiful. And so if we actually did some counting, there are about 80 parking places on the curve of Easy Street. If we use this site for gateway parking, plus the one to the left, we would probably have enough to be the same as the amount that we would get rid of. But that may be too big of a leap to go to non-parking in the Easy Street, but until we get there, it seems to me the site is a perfect place for a gateway parking lot. Everybody complains about not having enough parking. If that became a very nicely landscaped parking, you come under the arch, you go into town parking, you walk right up to the sundial, and you walk into Easy Street in the cactus garden. It seemed like a perfect place for a parking lot. I don't like parking lots, but it seems like a perfect place to be.
Concept. That's an interesting concept.
And then the one on the left is the same. That's an empty lot. You make that a lot too. You have 2 very nice lots right next to the entrance arch. People then can walk right into town. And the merchants in town can no longer complain about not having enough parking.
Well, it's an interesting concept, but and I think I know what you mean in Santa Monica. The problem from my point of view is that the weather in Santa Monica is dramatically different than the weather in Q3. And I don't see that many people walking anywhere here in July and August. I mean, granted, there are fewer people around, but I don't know whether it's gonna be as attractive. I mean, I've seen nice things like this done, pedestrian malls done in places like Ithaca. It's spectacular. But
maybe that would bring them out.
Well, there's another approach to your concern about what happens in the summertime. And that is, I've seen elsewhere, or how many acres is that within the red boundaries?
The red boundaries, kind of had that.
Okay, it doesn't
It's just a
matter.
little over an acre, yeah.
One approach to this could be to raise the existing structure on this. And you have surrounding this area a lot of individual small retail developments. You could build a larger facility there that actually has on the ground floor, with inside a mall type area, individual businesses. If you go up to Prescott, for example, there's a development called Bradford Courts that is similar to this. And on top, on the second story, you have a large restaurant, and you also have a large site for conferences.
For what?
Conferences, large space for, you know, having meetings either on the part of the local businesses, the chamber, for example, or groups that are coming in from out of town who like to have the weather for Prescott in the summertime. So it becomes a multi-purpose or multi-use building. The bottom floor are individual merchants with their own little businesses. It's not open, you've got doors into them, etc. You have a restaurant on the second floor as well as a large conferencing area. That addresses the walking areas, and it frees up a lot of these surrounding properties, and I don't know how much of it the town owns or not, but then through consolidation or aggregation of some of those properties, you could then develop other things that you might not be able to develop if you just put something else in those existing spaces.
Now, another suggestion about the sun is that the Sanderson Pavilion has a very nice collection of sunshades. We're only talking about 2 blocks of the curve of Easy Street. And if that's a walking promenade, there could be sunshades over the top, all the way out. You put in fountains, you put in trees, you put in seating areas. People can walk without any hesitation from the Cactus Garden over to a store, back. You do a zigzag up and down. It could be really quite extraordinary. But until we get there, it seems to me that we do need more parking. And this site seems to be the perfect place. It's within steps of the sundial, which is our iconic symbol.
Yeah, I mean, this is what this conversation's about. I know this concept's been brought up before. I know we brought it up, it was brought up in the original conversations with the Village Center master plan. And I know it was brought up when we were talking to the circulation plan group. But again, you know, as we start to evaluate these things, these are the conversations that we just need to continue to have.
I think if we turn this into a parking lot, we will have missed an opportunity. Because, first of all, I mean, from my perspective, you're making a big investment in Easy Street, and we're talking to all these property owners, trying to get them to do something, trying to get them with the facade improvement program, et cetera. I don't see a big burst of energy coming from them that's going to generate a whole lot of sales tax revenue in order to even pay for the improvements that you're talking, you know, the sun sales and all of that. I like the concept, but I would rather the town kind of follow those property owners when they make the investment and they're putting in, I mean, you know, who's going into the art gallery now?
Somebody's used.
The Wild Holly?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the
Foothills.
Foothills Rescue.
And it's gonna be a thrift shop.
It's already open, yeah.
Well, A, it doesn't look good, and I don't wanna do a whole lot more investment to, I'm sorry, I mean, it's all a noble cause, but I'm into generating sales tax.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you just bladed this and turned it into a parking lot, you get zero return on it, and I think it's one of the highest potential properties that we control. We can dictate what kind of architecture we want. We don't have to deal with, I mean, I love all the small business peoples and all the small properties that are there, but we're kind of dealing with balkanized states in a way when we're talking to them. This is, you're dealing continental, you know, you've got the opportunity to do a big thing. And personally, somebody asked me about it the other day, and I said, well, frankly, I'd like to have 3 levels there. I like your restaurant on top. I'd like to have a wonderful restaurant with a view of Continental Mountain there, upscale. And then, I don't know whether it's 1 floor or 2 floors, but I like the concept of mixed use, not with residential, but with retail and some kind of, maybe a Talakapaki kind of way, but not Talakapaki, but some character. I think this is an opportunity with a 1 acre site to really make a significant design feature for Carefree that reflects the values of the community, and also keep in mind that what we're trying to do is generate sales tax.
My thinking, Peter, is that the parking lot is temporary, near future. If we had a developer who wanted to develop that site right now, I would say absolutely, but unless.
Well, but that's the process that we're going through, that if we come up with some degree, well, the question is, do we come up with some degree of vision for what we have? Or do we just throw it open and say, the town has a 1 acre site, blah, 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 very interested in sales tax. Right, go, developers, tell us what your idea is.
And that kind of goes back to the things to consider
And see,
is how do you want to approach this, right?
to Peter's point, I agree with him. I think,
Uh-oh.
obviously.
Wait a minute.
I know that's a problem.
What's today's date?
14:25. Oh, you broke the clock.
Because we could throw it open to developers and say, we've got a vacant site, what do you think we ought to do for it? Or we can do a little bit more judicious, be a little bit more judicious about it. Because the other piece of this is, you know, we're not just talking about from a planning standpoint.
Right.
We're not just talking about this site, we're really talking about what do we do with the town center. Right now, we've got a lot of individual, discrete facilities comprising what we happen to call the town center, which by many definitions really isn't a town center. And so when we talk about highest and best use of properties, I think about it not only in terms of highest and best use of individual acreage, but highest and best use of what do we want to see as a town center? And do we want to begin to see aggregation of one type or another? And that includes aggregating individual little parcels, if we can, potentially into larger parcels, so that we can be more creative in what goes on top of that, those larger parcels. You know, I like Peter's idea of maybe going to 3 stores in that suggestion that I made, whereas, you know, you could have retail on floor 1 and 2. I mean, I'm not trying to plan the damn thing right now.
Right.
But the point is, you could put various different types of uses in a fairly confined area, not take anything away in terms of retail revenue generation, potentially by that, but open up a lot of other things for some creative designs.
And maybe if you went 3, that north half of the property or some slice of it could be underground parking or less covered parking. You know, to use up some of that space.
Should I agree with you twice?
No, that would be terrible. My heart couldn't take that. Sell my clothes.
I mean, I'll be honest, like for Les's, you know, his proposing, I don't think it's a bad idea, to be honest with you, from an urban design perspective, and I think it would help solve issues as far as it relates to summertime shade and all those things. But are people still gonna come out even in the shade in the summertime when it's 110? I don't know. But it does help for other, maybe it does extend to September, October, May. It could do those things, and it does create that level of connectivity. But I'm not quite sure that's the next step. And so as we start looking at the overall, what we're doing with circulation planning, even though we're not agreeing to put any kind of parking on the arterials today, the plan in the future will allow, if that's the way the town would like to go, and they decide, hey, we want to do these other things, and we've evolved to your point where we've aggregated, this becomes a more viable economic center. Maybe it makes more sense to start doing, okay, let's do some of this on-street type parking. We look at other parking solutions, and then it can come back. And maybe it's just not ready for that leap yet. I don't know. I think that's a bigger urban design conversation, and I think that's I don't know how, I've been struggling with how we get to make that spend, to your point, with no ROI or revenue behind it to justify making the spend, unless we can have somebody come in and say, oh, I'm just gonna buy the whole thing and we're gonna develop it all as one thing. And that is an approach we could take. That's a longer term approach, and it's got a lot more risk associated to it, whether somebody is gonna be willing to bite that apple or not. I don't know. And it's a legitimate conversation, and this is why I wanted to have it.
Go ahead.
I agree with Peter that I think in the long term, some kind of multi-use structure in this property would make sense, but I don't think we have anybody who's willing to do that. At least I haven't heard that. And I would hate to let that parcel sit there and not be used when we could use it right away. And I could imagine on very short term, we tear down the town hall, put all of you people somewhere else. I don't know where that's going to be. That's another question. And
We'll give them a shopping cart.
We'll give them a shopping cart and level it, pave it, make it look nice. It's parking until somebody comes along and says, I want to develop this.
So just,
Then it's ready and we can do that.
I've had at least 3 legitimate developers tell me that they're interested in doing this if they can get the height, if they can get a little bit more intensity or density, if they can get mixed use. Those are the I'm just, to be honest, these are the conversations.
When you say mixed use, does that include residential?
Potentially, yeah.
I would be very, very, very enthusiastic about it if we can make sure that the visibility is not on the inside, because as we all know, at the moment the visibility of the town centre of Carefree is not from our arterial roads. Whatever we have should be very visible from Carefree Road,
And I think,
as to what it is.
I think what I'm understanding you saying is what we do not want to do is to do what Cave Creek has done, which is put 2-story apartment buildings literally on the sidewalk, and a big church type building right on the sidewalk. I think it's what they did is horrible, and if that's what you're talking about, I'm 110%.
I certainly don't want that, but I want Cave Creek Road, as we all know, is only going to get busier and busier and busier. And it would be nice to have something visible so they can see it's a restaurant and a small shopping centre and parking as they whiz past, and hopefully they're not whizzing because of people on the lane by there.
Well,
That's a design issue, architecture issue.
without getting into the design and architecture, I agree with what you're saying overall. I mean, I think we need to think a little bit outside the box. We can continue to replicate what we've done, which is a lot of one-off developments. We can improve the facades, etc. But we can come at this a little bit more in terms of, do we want to create, in essence, a little confined retail community that we end up calling the town of Carefree? And that means utilizing space, both vertical space as well as land space, in different ways than what we've been used to doing it. We've got plenty of models for that. We can go to European cities who develop their retail areas around large plazas. We have examples here in Scottsdale, Metropolitan Phoenix, where that kind of development is beginning to happen, where you have people, retail, potentially residential, all focused within a small concentric area that is a community within the community. You've got the perfect beginnings of that in terms of this park that we've developed here in the town center. And you can build retail developments, including residential, potentially on floor 2 or 3, around that. As far as having a lot of open spaces, no offense, with the sailcloth above it, It isn't gonna do much good when it's 110 degrees outside and you've got wind factors of 15, 20 miles an hour, because you can be walking like you're in an oven. Yeah. So I think in order to accommodate the pedestrian component of that, some aspects of an interior that can be lined with trees, shade cloth, etc., I think makes a lot of sense. Now, is that gonna happen overnight? No. But if we develop that vision now, then whatever planning we do will steer towards that end product. You still agree?
I'm hanging.
Anyway, that's just some thoughts.
Yeah, and so I think this just kind of comes back, somebody mentioned the comment, is kind of how do we want to, so let's say we're going to move forward, and I don't think we get an agreement on the fact that we probably should look at the development of this particular site. And if we were to look at the development of this site, how would we want to approach that? Do we want to dictate what those terms are? How much do we want to dictate those terms are? Or do we want to set general guidelines for what we want? You know, we want to attract a certain level of retail. We want a restaurant, what the type of mix looks like, or we want mixed use. What's an allowable, what's okay as far as part of what's the allowable uses? And then what type of designs within context, you know, like, do we want something that's going to be more nostalgic to the town, or do we want something that's going to be more modern? Do we want something that's going to be, you know, more Spanish, and the next Spanish? How do we want to set the tone for what that design looks like, and how specific do we want to get? Because there's two ways you can look at it. One is you can say, we're going to fully come through, have somebody come design something, and then we're just going to hire somebody to come build it, develop it, own it, and do the deal, right? And that's an RFQ. Or you can say, do we want to just kind of set the framework and then open it up to creative ideas from developers who can come in and say, you know what, I've evaluated it, I think this is what I'd like to propose, and then you can go from that perspective. And then you can say,
my suggestion is that this is what to do with this ultimately after we use it for a couple of years as a parking lot. What we do with it ultimately.
But you got a concession on the gate?
Yes, I do. I've got a hot dog stand right. But I think now I've sort of lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. Ultimately,
No,
after a couple of years of the parking lot,
we're gonna build something's gonna get built there, and it's not gonna happen right away. I think we need to have open it up to the public and have some sort of way where the public can put in their ideas.
We're sending a lot of opinions out there. It would be interesting to hear what
oh
people
yeah,
I'm reminded, I hate to talk about California because I just hate to talk about California, but in Santa Barbara, many years ago, State Street at the southern end was really shabby, and a developer came in and wanted to build a big development, and it caused an enormous storm of controversy. So they stopped their process, and they spent 2 years having workshops with the public workshops. And they ended up with a project twice as big as they had originally proposed, because the public put in everything they wanted and they got it. And so it seems to me that this is a really good thing for our public to weigh in on. We don't have a plan right now, we don't have a developer right now, we're not looking at elevations. I think we should set up some system where the public can be asked, what do you think should go in this park?
I think you're right, and I think that's part of the plan, that we're going to have a series of listening sessions.
Okay, let's go on then.
To do that before we ever get anything off the ground and start drafting it. But I think that part of what we have to explore and flesh out here, not that it's carved in granite at all, is conceptually, what are you thinking of? I mean, I would like to see a restaurant, outdoor, obviously it's not gonna do well in the summertime, but that you take advantage of that view. That view is just spectacular. And the other thing that I think that personally that I would like to see here, and we kind of lost it once Savannah came, there was a performing arts center of some sort. interior so that you can put jazz concerts or singers or something inside. I love Sanderson Pavilion, I really do. But I think that if you had a venue that you could draw people from the valley to come up and have a nice dinner and see a show, a small theater,
Like a dinner theater, perhaps, or something.
Dinner theater, I'm not so sure about, but a theater concept, performing arts thing. The other thing that I would, maybe, I don't know how fast our timeline is, but I'd like to put up a design competition even before we start talking about, the whole Rio Salado project at Tempe all came out of the School of Architecture. They threw it out to a whole bunch of architectural students. They said, what would you do with the river bottom?
It's interesting. So when we were looking at evaluating the 48 acres, south of the airport there, we actually went.
Okay.
We actually went and met with, because as part of the economic development plan, that was one of the sites I needed to evaluate to see what the economic development potential was. So we actually had the MRED students, the Masters of Real Estate and Development through ASU. They actually made it their course project, and they all did proposals on what they thought the highest and best use was for that property, which was interesting. But to that effect, there's ways that we can do that where we can incorporate.
Well, I mean, I don't, you don't have a timeline up there, but I imagine that the timeline just to do listening sessions will take a better part of 4 to 6 months.
At least.
In order to have enough.
Yeah.
So can we take a $5,000 prize or something like that and offer it to the School of Architecture, and as a senior project or whatever, have them form little, maybe as a capstone project? I don't know how that all works, but as a capstone project to the architecture school, let them come back and see what they throw against the wall. And at the same, that doesn't say they're gonna win. I mean, they're gonna control it, but then we have listening sessions and maybe, I don't know what else we can do to try to gather input and.
Yeah.
You can go to them too, but they're probably gonna charge you because they're on the edge.
Yes.
Does ASU have a School of Architecture?
Oh, yeah.
Well, then, I would just go straight to them.
Right, that's how Rio Salado
But we
got
need
up
to
there.
remember.
To Peter's point, I mean, both the city of Phoenix as well as Tempe back in the 60s struggled with what to do with what essentially was a weed infested river.
Junkyard.
Junkyard, yeah. Mining gravel out of it, etc. And it wasn't until what Peter's talking about happened that the concept began to take shape and form. And they modified it significantly.
Oh, yes.
I mean, there wasn't a proposal that came out of that they said, okay, we're gonna run with it. I think that's a great idea.
And ASU throughout the university has an orientation to interdisciplinary uses and sustainability. So you get some exciting ideas.
Well, and they might even want to work with their Center for for Innovation, which is on McDowell and Scottsdale Road. So you could have the architecture school work with those guys, and I think that's terrific.
And maybe do that first.
Damn, God, what's happening to the world?
Yeah. So I actually ran with the School of Architecture. We actually did that when I was in the city of Phoenix. We did it for 7th Street, the area between Camelback Road and Indian School Road. I'm sorry, 7th Avenue. And the Melrose area, I think is what they call it now.
Crown with a.
Yeah. And so we actually had them come in. They did a lot of designs for the various different buildings there. They had a lot of creative things. The one thing so we'll be talking about this in the next agenda item, but we have an opportunity to be able to do the work with the ULI, or Urban Plan Institute. And we can actually make this a component as part of what that looks like. And so, I mean, they're tapped into urban land planners, and maybe there's opportunities there for them to at least give us some kind of thoughts and guidance as well. So.
Well, I would like to do that. I'd like to structure some listening sessions about uses and whether we have specific uses or we just want something great, that kind of stuff, and see where we go with that. But it's a wonderful site. I guess one of the other questions is, what would you do with Town Hall?
Yeah, well, So the concept of, that's we gotta figure out, right?
Can I just make a couple more comments
Oh,
on
sure.
this before
Yeah.
we move on to that? We need to make sure that whoever is thinking about whatever they're doing with the site is aware of our local demographics and how many elderly people there are and their limitations.
Well,
As
yeah.
you know, I'm with the Footless Caring Corps, and you know, places need to be accessible, and we're only getting older around here. With luck.
Well, some,
With luck.
Yeah, but there's a whole replacement program.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
they're not necessarily young, because you've got to be rich enough to
That's
afford it
true,
up
yeah.
here. And then the other thing, you know, going back in my distant memory, when the Ed Lewis project, which was, I think, before your time, he had suggested, before the hotel was built, he had suggested residential and commercial mixed, but an open space, which he wanted, and the herd were very interested, as a satellite of the herd with revolving exhibitions.
Didn't they have that at El Pedregal?
Oh, they did, years and years and years ago, yeah.
It wasn't that many years and years and years.
Oh, well, it's over 10, that's a long time.
Okay. But that failed, didn't it? I
That
mean,
was gonna be torn down.
there's all
It
kinds
was,
of
yeah,
rooms.
it was at, it was near Safeway, it was what the Petco is, Pet Smart. Pet Smart was the,
Oh, I thought it was in El
No.
Pedregal.
no, it wasn't in that.
So-
I think it was there and then it
What?
moved.
Yeah.
What was it?
Yeah, I think it started there and then it moved when they built it new over by Safeway.
So for this conversation,
I'd like to make one point also. I think we're all in agreement this is a very valuable site, we want the highest value use for it. But I think we also need, at the same time, maybe not simultaneously, but early in the project, do an analysis of where is the best location for the offices that are currently in the town hall for the most effective governance of Carefree. I mean, and that will not be costless to relocate them. So I don't think, it's not like this site is a vacant lot.
Right,
There's-
but part of the redevelopment angle allows you to say, maybe we'll trade this for you constructing a building on that lot that is
Yeah.
less valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do a
Yeah.
swap like that, whereas without the redevelopment, it's a lot more difficult.
No,
to
but
do that.
I don't want it to be a total
Oh,
afterthought.
no, I absolutely agree with you, because the big advantage of town hall where it is the accessibility.
Steve, is some thought been given to alternate locations?
it's moving next week too. Yeah, so we've been thinking a lot about that, and the place I wanted to start was, these are the places that we, outside of the town hall, that we currently own. And so if you start looking at, the top picture is on Ed Everett, just off of Tom Darlington, where the water company is, and where we have the shop. And so we own property there, and then the other property we own is this building and that lot right there. So I just wanted to kind of say, you know, sometimes it's easier to try to work with what you have. If there's a way to do that, because you already own it. So like if we were to do something here, in this space here, we build up office and connect it to this building, there's advantages to that, right? We don't have to buy the property because we already own it. So we would just have to do something that connects into this space. Do we need another conference room? Because we have a conference room. There's a bathroom upstairs. We already have 1,200 square feet of upstairs, completely underutilized right now. You can see that when you come to my office, that it could be so much more. It's just not. And so there's things that we can be doing to that, but then you got to look at the engineering. You got to look at the accessibility, the displacement of parking. Is this going to be a good enough front door? But you have parking over here. So those are the things we'll have to figure out. Or, you know, is there an opportunity to do something where we buy a piece of property and we build something, and in that case, maybe we partner with another user, right, that wants to own their own building and do something, and we can partner on a site and do something that maybe next to a coffee shop that where we've created this. There's a lot of things that we can start to explore as we start to look at what we would like to do. I mean, what if and I'm not saying we're going to do it, you know, you go into a pet resort and you only take down half of it, and then the town gets lease revenue on the rest of that, right? There's a lot of things that, yes, we've thought about, and that could be a good economic win and could actually help solve additional economic development goals of maybe being able to create more because we got town hall and we could create more economic viability out of another piece of property, just by the fact that we built an office there, right? So those are the things that we are thinking about, and I want you guys to start thinking about that too. Like, and what I want to kind of leave the conversation with is if you were to have a home run, like this is a home run project for both this site and what you think could be done with the town hall. I just want to kind of get each one of your thoughts on that. And if you're not ready to articulate it verbally, maybe get that written down, and then we can start taking that as a framework that we can start taking to the public. Because when you go start with the public, you want to start with something. Like I said, you guys, the tip of the spear of the conversation. Have a framework for that, and then start, I'd like to utilize this space in here where we could have people come in, have stations set up where people can talk about various different issues, and then maybe we can do like a Q&A session. I'd love to do something like that with the public, and we can do it in the summertime where we have the people who are committed to staying here all summer, and then you can then wait and do something in the fall for people who are part-time residents, but still have, still enjoy the town, still spend money here and do all that. It doesn't mean they're less of a resident, but there's a different need for somebody who's here year-round, and we know that. And so, so that's kind of where I want to kind of just at least get to today of like get the idea of like, do you want to try to come up with something specific, or are we not even ready to have that conversation yet? I just want to get to a place where we can get logically to that next step.
Can you tell me more about the property that we own by the water company? I mean, I know this building, and I know where it is. This obviously is almost as prime a location on the circle as the current town hall. But the water company building is out of the main, the main drag. So what do we own?
We own it, and the water company leases that space from us, and then so I don't know the exact square footage of that building.
And we own the warehouse.
And then then the rest of it is the public works. So we have all of our signs and the equipment's there, and then part of it is storage, and I think we ended up getting one of the buildings worked with Qantas, and Qantas does some storage there. I'm not saying that that's the space, I'm just saying, so if you displace that, what do you do with public works, right? And so those are the things that we just got to think about, and I'm not sure, I just wanted to point out that we do own some property, that's about the extent of what we own outside of right away.
On the bottom one, the one next door, there's a tenant, how many tenants are in next door?
The 11th on now?
No, the one next to this building that we own. The second picture, the bottom picture.
No, we own that
triangle.
pentagon, almost a triangle there.
We own the triangle, but that's a building, right?
No,
No, that's
slab.
this concrete apron slab, whatever you want to call it here.
That's just the slab that we own.
Right. No, we own this building too.
And we own this building. Okay, the
But not
building
the
just
building next.
north of the concrete slab, is that available for purchase?
No, well, we've reached out.
Not,
Yeah, we've
okay.
reached out. I even tried to straw me and reach out several times.
What are the considerations when we talk about where do we put the town operations, for lack of a better term, the town administration? There's a general rule of thumb within the construction industry that says it's cheaper to build from scratch than to renovate. So that's something that ought to guide our thinking as we move forward in our discussion of whatever we do. That's just been a rule of thumb for years and years and years.
I'm personally torn on, I think this would be a good idea here for a lot of reasons, because it connects everything together. But I also like the idea that, you use the space we're in now to seed the town center, that area with something really cool. And then is there a better place where we can seed another area and say, for instance, the site where the bourbon guys were gonna go over there across from Mariachi Plaza, you buy a site like that, and then you co-develop it with somebody else, where you develop something where you can then have more revenue generation. You create your own retail opportunities there. That's a possibility too. But then now you're getting into an investment game. What kind of money do we have to be able to invest? How do we do that? And then what are the returns? Is the public willing to be that aggressive or progressive in an investment strategy for town center?
Does Carefree qualify for an industrial development law?
I'd have to look into where we find in the IDA. I don't think we'd use IDA for that. There's a lot of other mechanisms that we can use for financing.
I wasn't specifically talking to this. It's just that if we were to proceed with trying to aggregate your various properties based on whatever design concept we come up with, would that be a potential avenue to generate money to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different opportunities for us to be able to create opportunity for financing. And yeah.
Steve, we have this building, we own this building, it's known, it's a beautiful public space. Makes sense to me that town offices ought to be located next to the town council meeting place, this. So what could we do with, would we build on that triangular spot?
Yeah, so you could add a two-story building here that connects into the 1,200 square feet upstairs. You can easily get 5,000, 6,000 square feet out of that if you wanted to. You displace this parking, but we've got 100 and potentially 106 parking spaces out here that we can figure out how to utilize.
So is this actual space in here that we're talking about?
Yeah, this space right here, yeah.
With the cars, that's it? That seems logical.
I'd have to move my
have
back.
a town council, the public space and the office buildings would be all together.
Yeah, that's a thought. Again, I'm just opening up the conversation, and there's a lot of pros and cons to doing that. There's a lot of pros and cons to trying to see another area and see if there's a way to financially offset the cost, right? So you do this, it's a cost, and there's no revenue to be gained here other than just you're operating a town. Do we want to be in the investment business, or do we just want to not and just do that? There's a lot. As I'm saying, we don't have to decide today, right? What I'm saying is are we willing to explore all the various different possibilities of how this could work out? And I can bring those back to you guys, and we can bring this up to the public. What does the public think? You know, what's the public's appetite for doing some of this stuff?
Isn't one of the other questions whether putting the town staff and town operations here the best and highest use of this area?
Yeah, is it highest and best use?
Yeah,
Right next to it.
I don't think so.
Do you think there's more value to do something else here? Or?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
To do something else. So let me ask this question, different question. Let's say that the town hall burned down and staff has to be relocated. Where would you go? What's available?
We would all work from home.
No. Where?
Just kidding.
But is there some place that would be available now in the immediate future that you could move into that's a possible?
If you're gonna move next week, it'd be PetSmart down there or whatever that.
But we couldn't even really move into there because it's not set up, so we'd have to even renovate that. So is there an existing office building that works for us today that we can move
And then the
into?
other one on Bloody Basin.
Yeah, so the only existing building that I saw that could potentially out of the box might work was the two-story building right here.
On Bloody Basin.
No, not too small. Because that's only roughly 1,000 square feet more than the building we're in now. And part of our issue is storage. We don't have storage for documents. So there's just a lot of, if you go in there, I mean, I can't even put my office in there, so that's why I'm upstairs. But where was I going?
That's
choose
the
the
other
right
two-story, a two-story building, it's just up there.
Not the doctor, but you're thinking of another building.
No. Oh, the two-story building right here on Carefree, the office park, right? So these just changed hands. I actually was talking to the guy who owned it and then the guy who just recently bought it and they kept asking me, you know, is the town interested? Because he had a two-story there, it was mostly vacant. But he's like, look, I gotta lease that place up, or you gotta tell me whether you want it. And I'm like, I'm not in a position to buy it from you or to work out a deal. So he ended up leasing it all out. But those, do they come up? Are there opportunities? Yeah. And so do I kind of try to stay in front of those opportunities? Are you looking to leave?
Yes.
Do you mind if because she did bother to stay, do you mind if I ask?
Yes, be what?
Well, just your thoughts on the conversation is.
Well, I guess the thing that I'm thinking of is, at what point is there an ROI done? In other words, what do we think that we're going to get for selling the town hall property
Right.
versus what is it going to cost to relocate the offices? I mean, at some point that has to be considered.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe I'm thinking 3 steps ahead where we are right now. The comment about building this out does seem logical. Because I'm counting how many parking spaces. Is that a really good use of that space? So those are just things that have come to mind. I agree also with, it's really hot right now. I don't even like to walk from my car to a building, let alone shopping. So I think that concern is also a valid one as far as the whole discussion about parking. I think it's a great idea, Les, as far as being able to really pump up the downtown area and make it into something, but the heat would preclude from that. So those are just things that have crossed my mind sitting here.
Yeah, no, and I think the economics is a great point, and that's one of the things that we did, and how we evaluate that, and how we want to evaluate that versus the qualitative factors. You know, at the same time, you don't want to do things, and at the end of the day, you've lost sight of why you're doing it, right? And
Right.
so we got to kind of, how do we rank what is the most important? Is it the economics the most important? Is it seeding the rest of the area for the, to be successful? How do we rank those things, and then how do we look at that ROI and in totality? Is it going to be a purely deal-driven economics? Is it going to be the larger project economics that if we look at sales tax in general, what the indirect benefits are, and how we want to evaluate that? And so as we walk through this, we'll kind of get a better idea of what is the most interest to the public, I think, as far as what they see. But at the end of the day, you can't be a loser either, right? And I think you can build great things, but like the El Petrigal is a great example, beautiful. It just didn't work out economically, right?
Can I add a couple other things?
What's up to the chair, but
Can I add a couple other things?
Sure.
I always have an opinion. I'm always thinking. The idea also of building out over there, I think this area could be a really nice, welcoming place for the public to come in. I think that would be another benefit, so you're almost leveraging this area here with a conference room.
the space here.
Yes. The other thing was getting resident input, I think is great. I know that a lot of people are not here full-time, so timing when those meetings would be also important to make sure that some don't feel alienated because they're started in the summer, and then there might be this perception that, oh yeah, well, most of the people aren't here anyway and they started, so, I think a lot from a resident perspective, because obviously I'm a resident and I'm not on any council right now, so, so I'm constantly thinking of how things would appear to a resident. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, the water district building, is there space in that building that we own that could be modified fairly quickly for new offices?
No.
No.
If you're gonna turn that into an office, you're gonna have to lay it, relocate the shops, and it's industrial space.
If we were to do anything there,
The access is awkward. The access is very awkward.
I think if we were to do anything there, we would want to coordinate with the owner of Mariachi Plaza and do something that is a complete redevelopment of that entire area. We could create shared parking. We could create, something of a shared environment. That would be. I think that's the play. There is working with that guy, but I'm not quite sure his interest right now is to do that.
Well, I don't want to go too far. Do you have, what do you see as the next step right here, right now?
So I think that what I'd like to do
We've
is
spent an hour on this, and I want to get to the next topic as well, so.
yeah. So I think the next step is I kind of would like for each to go around and tell me based on the discussion, based on the site, give me your synopsis of, or at least your initial thoughts of what you think, and then you're always welcome to give me more information. So I don't know if we could just go around, we can take just a few minutes for each one of you to say, what's a home run? What does it look like? Based on what?
Well, to me, a home run is handling both things well. The one, of course, relocating all the offices into reasonable space that doesn't wind up being a wasteful expense. I like this idea of co-locating with this meeting space. But also, if we're gonna develop the other site, I like Peter's idea because I also like it as something that adds to the whole look of the town, but also brings in people from outside of Carefree. We need people other than those who are either staying at a local motel or living in town. The restaurants, for example, in Scottsdale, it's a much bigger place, but they're filled all the time. What can we have here that will draw people from Scottsdale? It's not that far.
We go down to Louis, what do they come up here for?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that adding some kind of performing arts center or something that there's a reason to go up there. I want to hear Jackson Brown is playing up there and some thing. Anyway, that's your thoughts. Home run or goal. Your language.
One thing that we don't have up here, which for some reason it's never even been thought of for the whole of the cities of Phoenix, is it's very niche, I suppose, the National Theatre from England in London. They do live recording broadcasts in cinema. If we had a space, as you're suggesting, that could also be maybe a cinema, an art house kind of cinema, the one down at Camelback or Camel View or whatever.
Oh
it's
yeah,
called.
down by
I mean,
Scottsdale.
that used to be really nice.
Yeah.
We don't really have one of those anymore. This is the ideal environment for that. And I thought that for a long time. But also, as you say, a restaurant that's high enough to capture the views we have. I mean, how fabulous is it? That's one of the reasons we like it up here. It would be amazing to do that, but it needs to be visible from the street, but not right on the street. And when it comes to architectural style, well, we've got absolutely everything from soup to nuts here. Let's just make it pretty, not sort of crazy industrial straight on the street like in Cave Creek. And as for the town hall, well, I personally feel that this would be a good location for a restaurant as well, because we're right here, very close to the new residences and the hotel. But it does make sense, of course, for it to be expanded and to become the town hall.
Me? Home run for me is along the lines of what we talked about earlier, which is begin to consolidate what are all these various places on their individual lots, etc., thereby opening up some of the other valuable properties for development of whatever different types. And I know that takes a lot of work because you've got individual landowners that you gotta convince. So as part of that, you would want to partner up with a major developer, which means we have to have a vision, etc. As far as the town staff is concerned, one of the things that I hadn't heard discussed, and this would be, we'd have to have a temporary solution, so this would be a more long-term solution, is we've got this development going on the northeast corner of Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway. Part of that is supposed to be office development, or it's really the developer that's building the office space. So our cost for moving into that would be as a tenant in terms of potential tenant improvements, which could be negotiated as part of a lease. It's not really off into two lease, it's still part of Carefree. It's just as easy to get to, and in some sense, even easier to get to than here, in terms of potential parking, etc. And that would allow for the highest and best use of this property and some of the other properties. I think it's a very cost-effective solution, to be real honest.
What would you, so you brought it, and I actually thought about this a long time ago, and I forgot about it, and I'm glad you brought this up. What if we were able to work out an arrangement for the developer of the northeast corner takes down, does what you're talking about. In exchange, we get a building built, we transfer ownership, somehow we can get ownership and we move the town hall, you're talking about, to the northeast corner, and that being a more accessible place for contractors, people accessing town hall. It would be less convenient for residents, but I don't know how many residents come into town hall versus architects and all that. As town staff, it takes us out of it, but we're next to a retail development, we've got lunch, whatever it is. I don't know, I think it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea. That's one of the things I can definitely run that down and see.
Yeah, you'd have to find a temporary location, because it's gonna take them, what, 2 years? or whatever.
Yeah, it'll take them a while to get this
Yeah,
one.
so, but, I think that might be a good long-term solution.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah.
God,
What?
agreeing with you.
Well, what can I
And
tell
we
you?
already know Les's.
Well, I kept sitting here thinking, I don't have any idea what a good home run would be, I'm not sure. Got a lot of good ideas. I do think that we have something that's extraordinary, and that is, it's the cactus garden and the sunflower. Every time I ever see anybody who obviously is wandering around and I stop and talk to them, I always direct them to the sundial and the cactus garden. A lot of people don't know about it. So that's something that's unique, and that little curve of street, of shops on Easy Street is very charming. The problem is it doesn't really generate the kind of revenue that the town needs. So I think what we really need is, and the other thing that we don't have is we don't have any really high-end retail companies that sell high-end women's fashions or men's fashions. That apparently they don't want to locate in Easy Street because it's not high-end enough looking. So maybe that's never going to change, and so that we're going to end up with Easy Street basically being a low income generator forever, and that we need to think about larger structures like on this property, more modern, that will attract more high-end retail establishments that will generate a lot of. My wife says there's not much women's shopping, and there's no men's store in
Is it
Jeffrey.
gone? There was one over
It's a long
Is
gone.
it?
There's no men's stores in this town.
No, I've been saying that for a long time.
Right?
Yeah.
And very few women's stores.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know,
That
what is-
whole market is sort of challenging. The Kierlands, one of their anchor places was Sundance, and Sundance is expected to close everywhere, including their catalog by August. Well, that
Oh,
was,
no.
isn't that dreadful?
That was one of their anchors.
Well, it's really an anchor in the Kierlands. It's
So-
been there probably at least 10 years, maybe longer.
So what is it that attracts people here? I see lots and lots of people walking around in Cape Breton, and they're going to all these little shops and stores and stuff. It's all along.
What's tourist tchotchke?
Yeah, we don't want tourist
No, we don't
tchotchke
need
stuff.
that. That's not-
We can't compete with that, and we don't want it.
Western
Yeah.
experience.
So what we need to somehow do is to, whatever we put in is got to amplify cactus garden and sundial. That's unique, and nobody has anything like that. Cape Creek is just a strip, it's just a strip of stuff.
I hate to say this, but I agree with Foster. I mean, if there's one thing that Carefree has that can be defined as a magnet, it's the cactus garden or the sundial. Most of the time you define magnet as a particular retailer or whatever, grocery store. But in this case, that's what we got. We don't have any other magnets. And so,
The tea room, I would have said, is a destination.
yeah, it's a destination, but it's a very niche.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So if we could, whatever the
But
plan
we're
is,
not
if we
gonna
could
generate
come around.
synergy from that niche.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
more restaurants in town, so
That's
it's not.
true.
Well,
If
I
we
think
could
that
use
we
that
need
and
to
then coalesce
Yeah.
the planning and development around that,
What?
that would make a lot of sense.
To me, and I want to wrap this up because I want to get to the next topic. To me, this development, what we would do on the town hall site, would have pulling power to pull people into Carefree, as well as residents to stay here. But I'm thinking the performing arts, to have somebody come up to do something, a restaurant with spectacular views, that would all be great. And if that works, then I think that the property values on Easy Street go up. And then it becomes attractive for somebody to start consolidating some of that ownership that you were talking, and doing renovation or rehab, redevelopment, blowing some of that stuff out. But I think that, so if this could generate property values on Easy Street, that would be huge. And then maybe where you put town hall to be determined. I don't like the concept of trying to construct here. I just think that you're squeezing something in, but that could spawn other office development and maybe try to pull some of the office space, office uses that we have on Easy Street and where we would like to have concentration. That would pull some of them closer to town hall, around that area. But the other thing that I think that as we go to these listening sessions, we have to have a better idea of who visits town hall other than you guys. The only time that I'm there, but I'm only rarely, I'm probably a frequent flyer there.
Yes,
All of us
absolutely.
probably are. Are people handing plans in and
Contractors are
plans out
probably number one.
and getting stamped? So I need to understand, besides this hearing room,
Yeah.
I need to have a better idea of, I know you need office space, but how much traffic do you really, how many meetings a week do you have with people coming in?
Yeah.
Or otherwise just standing over the counter and handing plans and getting a stamp and taking off. So, but I would like to get a better understanding of what your vision is for next steps. I would really like to see if we can contact ASU and get them in. What, the strategic plan has you coming up with, what's the assignment in the strategic plan for fiscal year 26, which is what we're in now?
The assignment was to simply evaluate what we wanted to do and how we wanted to proceed.
So it's not necessarily doing it.
It doesn't say to issue anything. I think it was more along an evaluation of, do we even want to do anything? If we do, what is it do we want to do? And then kind of getting to that place. And so that's why I backed off with the document and said, let's just start with that conversation.
I'm good with that, but I think that we need to throw out some lines to grab some ideas.
Yeah.
My view is ASU, I'd also contact somebody in the producing or entertainment industry to get some sense of what do they view in the valley or in the North Valley. I mean, we got MIM here, you got Music Fest going on a lot, you know, so, and they're, yeah, well, they use the churches that hold 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that they can sell out as much as they sell out.
Yeah.
The Mint has 250, 300 performances a year. And they seem to be doing, so there's and most of the people in there all have gray hair, by the way.
Yes.
You know, They're sitting in there. So I would like to reach out and maybe the people that put on the MIM or the people that put on the Music Fest, what do they see as a niche that we might be able to fulfill on a spot like that?
Okay.
Well, on the ASU thing too, it occurred to me, I'm not sure whether there's enough of a market for this, but particularly since ASU has made such a move into online. But is there collaboration possible for post-secondary degrees, like the certification that's needed for accountants, for lawyers, for perhaps an MBA for doctors, given the growth of the health industry?
My guess on that would be that you want to be more in a working population than us old wise guys that are up there. We already know everything, and the last thing I need to do.
Who's teaching you anything? What you're saying?
What?
Who's teaching you anything?
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would like to see you come back in a meeting or two meetings and with more of a kind of a schedule and a scope in terms of where we go. I think our consensus is it's an opportunity for a parking lot, But it's also an opportunity for something more than a parking lot.
In the interim, because we don't have an August meeting, so the next opportunity wouldn't be till September.
That's perfect.
And what I'd like to do is at least with people like living around in the area, people who are here, is in stakeholders as well. You got property owners, you got other businesses. Is try to get other people's thoughts. At least start that process of input using kind of some of the discussion here as guidance. If you guys are okay with that, then I can come back with a little bit more. Unless you want to take the next 2 months and just kind of go through this. It's up to you guys.
Steve, how much square footage does town hall do you have in town? What is it?
3,800 feet.
How much?
3,800?
You have 3,800. Is there 3,800 square feet available in office space in town somewhere that you could lease out?
And we probably need 5,000, really, with
Okay,
3,800.
is there 5,000 that's available?
I mean, I have to look at some of like the I don't think so though.
Well, you know, one short-term thing,
Nothing consolidated.
one short-term thing would be to think about you guys finding, leasing some empty office space and turning town hall, leasing town hall to a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because that's an amazing spot. I don't know, could that building be renovated and turned into a restaurant? No?
The more likely spot would be the bank building, right? Wasn't there a restaurant there before?
There was a restaurant in that space, but not in that building. And that kind of goes back to where my thoughts on the whole thing are I like the idea going back to the original concept of what they were trying to do with the international
Yes.
house over
Yeah.
here. And I like the idea. I think restaurants, when we start talking about what's the magnet here, look what's the magnet in Cave Creek for not just, we're not talking tourists, I'm talking about people who live in Phoenix proper, metropolitan area. They go there because they're gonna go to the Ornito, they're gonna go to our, food does drive things and food experiences are gonna drive things. And I think we have an opportunity to look at this particular site and put some activity out onto the sundial, where the sundial is, right? With people and tables, and how does that spread through Sunshine Way, and how does that connect to the bank? And you do the same thing, and you've got Greek, and you got Mexican, and you got Italian, and you get whatever, and you get this dynamic, and it kind of goes back, to me, almost harkens back to what, they had a great idea, it just was way before its time, right? And so can we build upon that energy, and in our restaurants, what, one-offs, can we get a chef-driven thing that is, it's its own unique thing, right? We've got Keelers, we do have so much uniqueness. That's where my head's at as far as the types of uses that can go there, and I like the form and function of being able to have something that's staggered or that has a patio that faces there and then something that faces back towards the other mountain, are the two things you can do. Maybe the patio back isn't a patio, but more of a use space where you've got this gorgeous place where you can have musical venues, where you can have a really nice, you can host business meetings for corporate meetings and stuff like that. You got the hotel space. I don't know, I'm just thinking, this is kind of where my head was going with it.
I think there may be some consensus that we all agree that would be, long-term would be something great. But I'm thinking again, in short term, is there something we can do with the town hall building to bring it into the private sector so that we can generate some revenue?
I don't think there's a lot of, you just have to lease it out as an office.
Colin, we got an hour and 15 minutes on this. And
Yeah.
when we get to the market, we're gonna have another hour, so I wanna end this and move on.
Just one quick comment regarding ASU and this timeline that we're talking about in terms of what we do over the next 2 months. They're always looking to put their students, particularly their seniors and their first year graduate students, into non-paid internships, just to get the experience. I will spend the next 2 months trying to pursue that as opposed to waiting.
Yeah.
My grandson just graduated with a graduate degree from the Thunderbird School of Management.
Yeah.
He got an internship just like that.
Yeah.
So it's worth pursuing in my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
I'm a big fan of using interns. Okay, next topic is the market position plan discussion.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the next one. And so, as we start to look at what market positioning is, and this kind of touches on what we've already been talking about to some extent here, is it's great to talk about in general visionary terms, what do you want to be? We want to be a pedestrian, we want to have retail, we want to have this, we want to have that. And we talk about that at a very high level. But at the end of the day, what is it that we really want? Like what's going to drive, what types of businesses, what's the mix of tenancy, how does this product look, and who are we trying to bring here? Like what is it that we can do and bring in the idea of having this unique environment that is competitive with the Kierlands of the world and the Scottsdale Quarters? There's other pedestrian retail environments that we compete with, and that is part of the issues that we deal with as this town center. Kierland they take people, right? There's people who travel from here to there. So what's the goal and what position do we want to put this place into? And I hate using the term brand because brand is just is another generic term. And this is about getting in more into the weeds and the nuts and bolts of vetting that vision. We've had that conversation earlier. And how do you vet that down to a more granular level, really what you want? And it's one of those times where the rubber meets the road and you start being honest with yourself. Like what really isn't working, what really needs to work, and if we really want these types of businesses, or we really want the environment to attract these types of visitors and customers, what's going to move the needle? And it starts with, what, do we want this to be a place where, carefree residents can really sink their teeth in and enjoy the types of the businesses that are here, the retail type businesses that are here, and can that translate to being attractive to out-of-town visitors? Can that translate? Does it become that in itself? Can we create that magnet that brings in other people? And so that is kind of the idea of what we're talking about. And then I've had this conversation, and there have been really candid and difficult conversations with some of the key businesses here. And I'll say our restaurants drive our revenue, but there are certain businesses here that are revenue kings over others, and they provide a product line that is different, and they've been here for a long time. And they do have concerns about being put together with something that isn't necessarily in line with what they think that their retail vision should be. And so they've asked me, these businesses, to kind of go through this exercise and let's be realistic about those things. And they include the events and activities, all the things that add to the flavor and the texture of what this product ends up being and who's it's going to attract. Who are we trying to bring here? Do we want to have a consistent desert mountain crowd? Are we bringing affluent people here? Are we looking to be all things to all people? The tea room doesn't focus in on just the affluent people. It's people who, it appeals to a wide group of people. And if you look at where they come from, she'll tell you they come from Buckeye, and they come from Gilbert, and they come from all around the valley. And what does that mix look like? This is what we start talking about position strategy, and you usually do this in the course of fixing your product. You kind of get your product to where you think it's really nice, it's starting to be successful, you're going to build on. How do you take that to that next level of saying, we should have these kinds of businesses, we should have this, we should do, and this is where it ties into the town hall site. You can use things that you control to leverage the things that you want to get. You can use programs, you can use finance, you can use funding, there's all these things we can do. But until we decide, kind of with some surety of what it is we want, and what do we want to be when we grow up in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, how are we going to apply those resources? How are we going to pull those levers to get what we want? And so that's really, you kind of look at it, the town as an investment strategy of what we want to accomplish, and we only control so much, but we have the ability to influence capital investment here. And so we have the ability to influence the types of visitors. And so what this would ultimately spawn into then is once you kind of further vet that, you get ideas for how to enhance the product, but it also would help to build that promotional strategy. How are you more effectively and efficiently spending your dollars to go after the piece of pie you can get in tourism, the piece of the pie you can get locally, what's the piece of the pie you can get in a 20-minute commute, the piece of the pie in the 40-minute commute, so how are we doing that and being more thoughtful and strategic about it? And so I've been interviewing different types of consultants that do this type of thing, and for the most part, the consultants I've come across have been they deal more with, let's say this is an A to Z strategy. They deal with the M through Z, right? you've kind of figured out what you want to be when you grow up. We're going to tell you how to go get your customers. It seems like there's a lot of people out there that do that. There's not a lot of people out there that specifically will focus in on the A to M part, and I'm struggling with that. I had the opportunity, I was at a conference, I talked to somebody who was involved with ULI. They were involved with our original Arizona ASTAP, which was done in 2013, which actually was the genesis for all the things that we have in the Village Center Master Plan. I mean, that really started that point to where we are today, to be having these conversations. So there's a ton of value that was created out of that process and that conversation. And I said, well, you know, I told her what we were trying to do, and I said, we're trying to do this part of it. She goes, we could do that. We can come back and evaluate everything that's been done up to date, and then you give us a specific task that you want us to do, and you want this panel to focus in on. We'll get some of the original panel members, we'll put new panel members on that are targeted towards, that are part of our ULI membership, that are targeted towards the things that you guys think are important. And then we're going to give you a set of homework assignments. And those homework assignments are going to be over months of time, and I can work. My thought would be that I would work with this board, and we'd walk through those homework assignments, we'd vet those homework assignments, and that would be the data collection, and that would be going through these kinds of conversations of what it is we want, various things. And we could even include the site as part of the whole conversation and how that fits into the overall strategy of the town center, to position it, how it fits in complementary, and that may even help facilitate a better conversation with other people, because they have infill developers who would tell you flat out, this is what I would do. This is where I would invest if you, right? And so we have that capability through this process to do that. And we kind of go through here. So the opportunity here, I know I talked through a lot of this, and the way that the process would work, again, is they give us the list of things that we would do.
What is ULI?
Urban Land Institute.
I'm sorry?
The Urban Land Institute. So it is the organization, and Arizona one's really strong between all the local developers, architects, urban land planners, economic development folks. There, a lot of these, it is the central place where they have a lot of these types of conversations that specifically focus on urban land design, area economics. It really does lend itself to that. And so they have agreed, and I had a little interview process, they've agreed to do it. They've already sent me a contract and said, here's a contract, how this works. I would say, we would want to put a scope of work together. We've got about $20,000 put in the budget for this particular project. They would only be a $10,000 solution, meaning that we'd still have $10,000 to do more if we wanted to add on to it or not. And so as things get vetted out, we can look to dive deeper, or maybe bring somebody on. Some of the M through Z consultants I've talked to, their programs are only like $10,000. So for 20 grand, we can probably do this and then have somebody come in and help figure out how we integrate whatever we kind of positioning into the promotional strategy. And then let Madison fly on the marketing side, and I'll fly more on the business development piece. And so I'm just getting your guys' thoughts on it. And
Can I?
yeah, you can do it.
Let me take the devil's advocate view.
Oh, no, now you can't.
Can do that?
Yeah,
No, can do that? Okay.
go ahead. I'm just kidding.
We don't need to do anything. We don't need to do anything. Because all of our angst and anxiety has been about generating sales tax revenue to be able to do all the things we want to do, fixing the roads and all of that other stuff. If northeast corner generates the kind of revenue that we expect, we will have a cushion and we will have plenty of money for the foreseeable future to meet all of our needs. So, given that, we don't need to worry about the fact that all the little crummy stores on Easy Street don't generate much revenue, because we have revenue from other sources. So we are stuck with Easy Street and all those little shops, and it's okay, because it's part of the charm of this town, and There's not much we can do about it because half of the population leaves in the summer anyway, and it is what it is. And if we have enough revenue coming in from northeast corner, then we just deal with, somebody wants to build a building, we deal with that. If somebody wants to tear something down and improve it, we deal with that. But we don't need to spend all of our time thinking about grand strategies about what we're gonna do in the future because things are actually pretty fine. That's the devil's advocate.
Yeah, so let me give you the angel's advocate.
Now tell me the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reality is that this area actually is significant.
It's what-
In totality, this town center, this whole area is a significant contributor to the overall. So when we went through the retail opportunities, you know, you're looking to the tune of $2 million, and it's not the what it could be, it's the what it could be if you don't do anything, right? And so if you neglect something, and all of a sudden you're making an extra million over there, but you're losing an extra 800,000 over here, or you're going in decline, you're going the wrong way economically. What have you gained, right?
We
So
can't control what the tenants, the landlords put in there. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah,
The
so,
fact that they put in another, used clothing store.
so here's the way I look at it, and we just had this conversation, is we don't look at it as a transactional based thing. We gotta look at this as an investment, right? What are we doing to attract capital? To John's point, maybe there's guys who can come in that are real estate professionals that see the vision, that feel it, they buy it, and they buy into the vision, they buy into the position, they get the strategy, they like the things that are happening, the sign, all the things start to come in together, and the next thing you know, we're working together to bring the types of tenants that are gonna lift everything. And I hate to say this because I'm not an anti-Hampton fan, because Hampton just got rated one of the top brands in the world as far as success goes, right? It's like one of the most successful hotel brands. But I'd like to see that get elevated in brand. I want us to figure out a way that we're successful, that the Hilton folks come in and say that badge needs to be up to the next level. That's my feeling on it. And I would like to see that.
What is the next level in Hilton hierarchy?
I mean, it could just be a regular Hilton, right? You know, I think there's boutique brands that they're bringing on.
Just like Marriott has the,
Yeah.
all the way up to 7 stories.
Yeah.
Hilton has something similar. What he's bringing up is actually something I was thinking about, and that is, the Hilton, the hotel is more than a revenue generator. It's a partner in care for you. You know, say what you will about the appearance and all of that, and I've had many thoughts about it all the time, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is they are a partner. And I think one of the things that we probably haven't explored sufficiently is how can we be a better partner? And I don't know what those might be, but the idea of sitting down and talking with them and saying, how can we make each other better, is something that we ought to pursue. More general comment, status quo is never good. And I understand where Les is coming from, but the fact of the matter is, at least
That's not my view, I was just throwing it out.
He was just being devil's
I
advocate.
know, and I'm arguing against the devil's advocate.
Okay.
My view is always, change doesn't come all at once. Change comes incrementally, and yes, even though you have property owners that are going to push back probably on anything that gets proposed, once you can convince a small number of property owners over to your line of reasoning, over to your projected activities that you want to do, and once they buy in, and once with us they help create that, then the others who have been recalcitrant, for lack of a better term, begin to visualize that, and they start to think for themselves, well, I've got a couple of choices. I can continue to fight against it, and it looks like I'm fighting a losing battle. Or I can be on the outside looking in, or I can really give this a reasonable shot and work with whatever is already happening. I've been around long enough, I'm only 59. I've been around,
In your dream.
Well, I could do the Jack
That makes me 42.
39, right, 39. I've been around long enough to know that a lot
If
of
you've been
times.
around long enough to know Jack Benny, you ain't no 59.
Who?
Yeah, but my point is, it begins to create, if not a tsunami, it begins to create an energy for change over and over and over again. And that's how I think we have to look at this. You know, we have to start, first of all, we have to have a vision, kind of the encompassing thing. But then we have to basically do this one step at a time. Get a couple of initiatives that meet our mission, our vision, and work it from there. And as Stephen already mentioned a couple of times, he and I did have a talk earlier. And I believe that if presented the proper way, you can get potentially big pocket developers in here to take half of the work that we would have to do otherwise away from us in terms of helping us develop that vision. But we have to, in order for them to do that, we have to tell them what we think is special about Carefree and how that translates into the kind of revenue-producing activities that we want to pursue, because we can't be all things to all people. That's it, anyway. And so anyway.
This is why, to your point, this is why I was really super excited about the ULI opportunity. It ties us in to that infrastructure of people who are part of that. It ties into the developers that are invested into the ULI program. It is a marketing opportunity for us in the process in and of itself, the communities that go through that.
Yeah.
Where we could actually go, we just went through this process, or we're going through this process, we'd like to get, you can even just spin it to even as far and wide as you want. The other part I like about it is the ability to objectively engage the stakeholders that are so engaging existing businesses. And I see a part of the whole process having candid surveys with all the businesses and all the property owners, and even candid surveys with residents, where we can come back and start and just say, look, let loose. Like, what do you think works for this area and what doesn't work? What you would do, what keeps you here, what would drive you away, and we can start looking at some. Because like I said, there are some certain businesses that I'd be sad if they left, because they do help drive the economy here. And you go look around and look and see which ones really are at that level, right? And that's not to say that we can't have a hobbyist and all that at some level, but.
I think to your point about the generic aspects of Carefree,
So what is?
the scenario, the atmosphere. The home office for my consulting company was in Bethesda. And I bought, actually my wife bought it for me and sent it because I was getting homesick, because I was spending a lot of time out there. She got this big painting of Carefree, the Carefree Vista. And I had it in my office, in the back of my desk. People would come in on a daily basis and comment about how beautiful that vista was. And where was it? And they would ask me about Carefree, etc. I mean, we have some real advantages in this town. We really do.
You've got a cactus garden and a sundial that nobody in the world has.
Yeah. And so we just need to be smart about how we present that to the outside community and how we motivate, how we sell people on Carefree.
I absolutely agree with you, and what our target, defining what our target market is. I reread the ULI stuff. My opinion is a bunch of old war horses sitting around giving us advice for 10K, and it's all off the top. I don't know what the process, all this, I don't know. I just feel this bunch of old men sitting on a dais and saying, well, what you ought to do is, everything that was in there is like either obvious or it's like, I'd rather get some hard data, who is it seems to me that we have an opportunity to exploit a lot of senior citizens that have a lot of discretionary income.
Yes.
So,
And what we ought to do is we need 30% of what goes on here has to be for the residents. We need a grocery store, we need a dry cleaner, we need a gas station, we need all of these things over here. But then, if we wanna make money, and we need restaurants. Because I would say on average, probably the people that up here, not everybody, but the median and above up here, probably eat out 3 or 4 times a week. They don't cook. I mean, they do, but they're tired of the restaurants here. They're starting to drive farther and farther away to get to a restaurant. So with that, what I wanna know is, what is it that we can do that attracts discretionary income from as far south as Kierland, because we all drive to Kierland to go there, up north and equidistant that way and equidistant in the Desert Mountain. What we've got to define is we need our 25 or 30% of our business base to serve the residents, the Bashes, and we need to get Bashan to upscale a little bit so that more stays here and doesn't go to AJ's and doesn't go to someplace else out of town. You know, that place needs a little bump up, but that's what I would like to spend 20K.
but don't we need to build, for example, these new restaurants that have just opened up, Patricia's Pizza,
Yeah.
My Italian Garden,
Right.
Cucina, all of these new restaurants that are opening up down there, there's space for them. Do we have space here in town?
Well,
If
but
somebody
that's,
wants to
we've
open-
got that lot is.
Well, both of them were replacing existing restaurants that
Right.
went out of
Yes.
business.
Yes,
Right,
but
yeah.
somebody could move
But
right in,
we
if
have,
somebody wanted to
we
do
have the
that, they
town
could.
hall that we can do.
2 years
With the
before.
redevelopment, maybe there's other things that we can do. Somebody would like to, I wanna buy these 5, but what incentives are you gonna give me to redevelop, you know, these 4 parcels on Easy Street?
Well,
You know, we can suspend sales taxes for 4 years.
Yeah.
That's a unique idea.
I think your idea of going back to our history and the international concept, which used to be the spirit and possessor, I think that would be amazing. That would draw people. And if they were, you know, we are doing these 2 or 3 nations this quarter, and next quarter we're doing these 2 or 3 nations, and they kept revolving with cuisines, my goodness, that would be.
well, to your idea of the whole unique aspects of Carefree, the sundial and the gardens, I think we can have some activities that draw people in that are not as big as Thunderbird Arts. Thunderbird Arts, to some extent, sort of takes over the town. But there's a town I've told Steve about. It's called Ligonier in southwest Pennsylvania. And a lot of it reminds me of Carefree, because there's a lot of little standalone shops, nothing that's a chain. It is absolutely gorgeous. It looks like it comes out of a Hallmark movie. The center of the town is the diamond with the gazebo, and they have little activities all year long. They have a scarecrow contest. They have soup that you can get as you're walking around the shops. There's an ice carving contest. Now, actually, obviously, that's not one that we
I don't know.
Fourth of July, I
Third
thought.
week in July, it's a good time.
So,
As you know.
and it actually has an enormously wealthy population just outside of town, because all of the Mellons live in the hills around Ligonier. It's an historic location. There's a significant, though small, museum, because it was one of the major battles of the French and Indian War, and it draws people in all the time. It has one big event, like the Thunderbird Arts, called the Ligonier Days. Then the whole town is sort of blocked off. But these little things might start drawing people in to see, well, that's a pretty little town. I never thought of going up there from Scottsdale.
No, I think it's a good idea, a closer, and I'm familiar with that because one of my satellite companies was in Harrisburg.
Oh, so you know the
Yeah, so, but on a smaller scale, if you look at Preston, you've got the courthouse, you've got the greenery on all 4 sides of the courthouse, and then the 4 streets. Montezuma, which is Whiskey Row, Cortez, and the others, all sorts of different shops. Almost none of them are franchises.
Franchises.
Almost none of them are franchises.
Franchise.
So they draw in a lot of people. There are certain times of the year, Christmas, the Whiskey Row Marathon, etc., where you've got 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people driving up from various parts of Arizona, including a lot of them from Phoenix, to spend 2-3 days there to spend their money. You've got Aconite, you know, which was after one of the artists that was up there during the 19th century. Well, those 4 streets are closed off. You've got vendors out in those closed off streets. Every one of the shops has music in it, an entertainer, all the various businesses, go to Costco in various locations, who bake goods or buy baked goods, etc., they are free. People come in, they travel throughout all of the towns. I'm not saying we replicate that here, but again, we have some of the fundamental makings of something like that using the Cactus Gardens. One of the things that I was sad about is that we changed the way we did Christmas. You know, when Joe Gamble was responsible for how we celebrated Christmas, it was more cohesive. It wasn't these separate events over 2, 3, 4 days.
Yes.
You had a lot of people coming to town for that. So it's things like that, in addition to, you know, various businesses, various retails, etc., that we could also be talking about, because that's bringing people. Because a lot of that is experience based. You're not going to get that in Carolyn. You're not going to get it at the Summit. You're not going to get it at Fashion Square. And I remember when Fashion Square was a strip mall. That's how old I am.
Goldwater's was there.
Huh?
Goldwater's.
Goldwater's was there. So it was an open mall.
It was 2 different malls, actually.
Yeah. So, you know, if, again, I go back to what I said, and I'll shut up. If we're smart about it from a planning standpoint, I think this town can offer experiences that you can't find unless you really travel quite a ways, like if you go to Sedona or whatever. So I think there's multiple faceted ways of us getting to where we want to go, as long as we know where we want to go.
But you bring up a good point about events, and this is one of the things that I do want to make sure as we go through the conversation moving forward is, you know, we look at events and we can talk about, and it's nothing against the Christmas parade or anything like that. I just don't know if that actually translated into anybody walking into a business, because all the businesses were closed when we do something like that. So does it make sense to bring thousands upon thousands of people when your capacity is 400? You can only serve 400 people at a time. In your restaurants or 1,000 people, and so, you know.
That's if they remember those shops, because they might not be able to get in that night, but they may say, you know, this looks pretty cute, or this looks interesting. I'm gonna come up
Right.
2 days later or a week later or whatever. I'm sorry.
I was speaking to a caring or neighbour, as we call them, who had family visiting just last week, and they were telling me about a town called Langley on Whidbey Island, which has an event weekend, which is a whodunit, a murder and mystery kind of thing, and every single business gives a clue and is dressed up as part of it and whatever. We've got all the space. We've got a lovely general meeting place for, you know, instructions and whatever. We've got lots of small businesses that could take part. That would, and apparently it brings in thousands of people these days. But the town is not in the business of events. That's, I know, you know, historically we had a couple of years where we were having events every flipping weekend.
So the big events, when we spend on big events, the consensus has always been, at the end of the day, once they get to a certain point, the costs to put on the event far exceed the whatever economic benefit there is, and it just becomes difficult to manage. You know, so it comes to a point where you have to have police and security, and that's, you know, so I think that's part of the issue. Like when I know with the Christmas parade is you got a bunch of kids walking around at night across Cape Creek Road, families with kids, and people were flying by at 60 miles an hour. It just, the last thing you want is somebody to get hit, right? And so there was a lot of concerns, there was a lot, and I think it was just, picking up the trash the next day. And those kinds of things are real concerns. And so, the question becomes is where does that sweet spot exist? And so, I have this data and information, and Max and I sat down and started going through some of it. When you look at like a really good weekend in season, and you compare it to a Thunderbird show, the total number of visitors for that particular weekend isn't that much different when you start looking at it. It's just the time frames and the turnover. So like a restaurant, right? If I'm a restaurant and I've got 40 tables, I want 40, 40, 40, and 40. I'm gonna turn that table 4 times versus, 400 people showing up and they can't eat there that day, right? Maybe they come back, maybe they don't. Maybe it was a bad experience. I'm never going back there. This place is always crowded. The whole what's his face? Nobody goes there anymore because it's too crowded. But you start coming in that. So I don't know where that is. And so is the idea then to your point is to have more events that somebody's always looking and saying, what's Carefree doing now? What's Carefree doing now? What's Carefree? I don't know, but I think it's worth the conversation as we move forward.
Look, I'll take a page out of the list.
Yeah.
I'll be the devil's advocate. You're only looking at it from one narrow perspective. I can look at it from the other perspective that says, if we're serious about getting a big-time developer in here, to convince him to do something large, and we have yet to define what that is. What are the questions that I'm going to ask before I make any kind of a decision, including whether I even want to continue talking about it, is what does Carefree have to offer in terms of experience? And I may look at it and say, yeah, it's going to cost Carefree some bucks to do whatever the events are. But for me, that's good because it's going to draw the people that I want to draw, whether it's a residential development, whether it's a mixed-use development, or whatever it might be. That's the cost of doing business,
right?
In some respects. So you're looking at it absolutely right. You're looking at it from a certain perspective, but I can make the counter argument that says that's one of the things that if I'm going to be a major developer in this town, that I want to see, because if it's just a dead town, it has no experiences. Why should I develop whatever I'm going to develop here when I can do the same thing somewhere else where there are experiences? So you got to look at it from both ends.
Yeah, and to answer the question is those are the kinds of things when you start talking about, we're open to the idea of creating the experience, we're open to the idea of being part, we've done all of these things to help facilitate and build the environment. Let's work together on those things, right? And so I think that's the answer to that question, and I think we should be thinking about that. I'm not saying we don't do events. What I'm saying is we, to your point, how do we do them to the most productive way? So where a big developer goes, you know what? If somebody's gonna be paying me 35, 40 bucks a month to be here, and we're talking big time, retail, they want access. They want customers walking on their door. They got to figure out. They want customers coming in, and so and that's the.
But that can be done because there's, like the example I gave you in Prescott, those stores are open.
Right.
They're open the entire time. It's no different than a grocery store. Grocery store has loss leaders. They know they're going to lose money on whatever those loss leaders are.
Right.
But the purpose is to bring people in.
Yeah. Then the other side of it is just the experience. Do you want? And I'm being a devil's advocate here too.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah. So the biggest complaint of people who live in Sedona is the fact that you've got big long lines of cars coming in and out.
Right.
Do you want that too, or do you want something that's just more consistent, where you're ringing the register, everybody in the town loves it. Maybe it's a little slower paced and it's not as exciting, but it's fun. It's a magnet. People do come to it. It's a regular on the basis. And you say, if there's 5 million people and we get 10% of those people coming up 5 times a year to spend money, and they're spending money every time they come, what does that look like? Does that move the needle for us? Does that pay the bills? And are we keeping the traffic down? Are we doing all the other qualitative things? I don't know the answers to all those questions yet. That's why I want to walk through all of this. That's why the positioning plan is, I think, important, because we need to understand, do we want to be a tourist draw for that, or do we not? Do we want to look at this as a different way. And I got my thoughts, but I want to start getting everybody else's thoughts too.
I guess I also think that we almost have an obligation now, because there's a certain aura to Carefree that we all see, that it's elegant, it respects the environment, and it's carefully planned. I don't want to be Cave Creek. Cave Creek is getting worse and worse daily. And I mean, I don't want to have a negative image for Carefree, that the image of Carefree is it's not Cave Creek, but that is a subtext. I don't want to be Cave Creek.
Yeah, I agree. You brought up the John Lewis project? Ed Lewis, I mean.
Yeah.
I voted against it. I was on the P&Z back then, and I voted against it, because that was one of my concerns. However, I don't know if I got wiser or not, but at this point, I have to look at that, to your point. You have to balance what you're talking about with the revenues that are coming in. You know, to his point, or somebody made the point that once the northeast corner is developed, we won't have anything to worry about. Oh, I disagree. We may have something not to worry about in terms of revenue flow for a certain time period. But our infrastructure, and maintaining our infrastructure, is going to continue to be more and more expensive. And the increase in that revenue flow from that development, when it's fully built out, isn't going to increase proportionately to our costs for continuing
And we
to run
have
this.
no idea what the new contract is.
So we still, we still have to.
And we have to worry about the fact that ACE is gonna be gone by August.
Yeah.
What, I'm sorry, what?
Ace.
Before the end of this month.
And they may not be the last ones.
It may not be.
The last ones.
But
Oh, yeah.
let's go back to your, for market positioning, your property, bring back ULI again.
Yeah.
Now, I just don't know how much data they developed, how much real insight they brought. And I wasn't here, but my impression is all these experts are sitting up there and opining.
Yeah, so I think when they,
And I want something a little harder than
so I asked them,
opine.
so I asked them about that, and I said, look, this isn't like we're not taking a snapshot here. We want to walk through this in a progressive, it needs to be a fluid, dynamic process. And they said we would put the group together early on. And again, it comes down to a succession of things that need to happen. And then we can utilize the other funding if we need to do a survey. And we can start getting the data and information put together, and they would be able to provide expert guidance as we went through that. Then you have the panel days. And the reason the first panel was the first panel was that's what we asked them to do, right? We had no idea, and just, geez, tell us what we need to do. But look at all the effort that came out of that. And that's why I started looking at it going, and the reason I liked it was successful is it engaged stakeholders. And I don't think, I toss it back and forth. I think a private, somebody who could just dive down there and just give you here's the dirty, this is what I think. Or somebody who can, their process where it can be more engaging and more of a process along the way. They step in, they give you information, you kind of follow back up and you get a report out of it, and then you can hire somebody to kind of, okay, let's really dive into that. The other side of it is, and why I like it is that we're, 10 years into the Village Center master plan being created. We have it in a redevelopment plan. Every 10 years you want to evaluate those things. It's been 10 years since that plan was originally created. We just turned it into a redevelopment plan. We really haven't fully evaluated it in a long time. And maybe it's the same, it just falls into that. It gives us the opportunity to reevaluate the things that are in there. And that's what they can do because I think there's a lot of things a lot of birds we can kill with one stone by doing it.
Steve, let me take the devil's advocate. I love being the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I don't have to commit. So here's another devil's advocate position, and that is that we are talking about all these strategies to try and increase people coming into town. And do we really want that? Do the residents want to live in a town where there's gonna be lots and lots of maybe traffic jams every weekend? I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe this is the kind of thing that we ought to find out by having listening sessions and talking sessions, because I would not be surprised to find out that, given the age and the affluence of the people who live here, that they're gonna say, no, I do not want long lines of traffic coming into this town, and I don't care that we don't have a John Barbagos men's store on Easy Street, and that we don't have a, I don't know, Manolo Blahnik, what is that the name of it?
Manolo Blahnik.
Okay, we don't have one of those stores. A lot of people maybe don't care. They don't, or in fact, they don't want it. They don't want this to be an upscale little Rodeo Drive. Are we really talking about maybe trying to turn Easy Street into something more like a Rodeo Drive with really high-end stores that will generate a lot of revenue? Maybe that's what we're talking about, but I'm not sure that a lot of people in this town would want it.
No, and I don't think we're looking at that either, but also, a lot of these people may not want the traffic, but they want the infrastructure maintained, and they also don't want property tax. So how, I mean, we're not
It's the balance,
suggesting
right?
we're
But
different.
is the town center the solution to the problem of the revenue question?
Well, it becomes an issue of competing, not only priorities, but competing opinions. Because, for example, we could solve all of this very easily if we go for a property tax, right? Back to the point though, to the consultant part, having been a consultant, I will tell you, any consultant that charges $10,000 is not doing a deep dive of anything.
Right.
My guess is what they will do, they will have one of their entry-level consultants, the guy that they're paying $40 an hour to,
ChatGPT is gonna do it.
yeah, go over the old report and basically just modernize it. To do a deep dive of what you think you want these guys to do, you're not looking at 10 grand. You're looking along the lines of the consulting fees that we're paying to Kim Horn for the traffic study. I think in many respects, this is early. You know, I like the idea, whoever brought it up here, I think, of having these listening sessions to hear what the town really is looking at, and you're gonna get.
Yeah, but I think that you have to compare and contrast different, you gotta present, straw man
Yes.
options.
Otherwise, it's
Because
just gonna
you're
be a
talking
free-for-all.
events, my idea, based upon what you just said, say that we can do 400 meals an evening, okay? Well, then I would be starting to, for events, I'd be targeting 200, 300 people.
Right.
You know, not the wine and arts festival where you got thousands and nobody gets it. I mean, that doesn't help anybody. But 300 people or 200 people that come to a venue to do something, well, then they go and have a restaurant, then they walk along and they, you know, it's not, but you have it 3 nights a week or something like that, you know, and you have a music venue that has something where people go to. So, but that would be, you know, let's create 3 or 4 straw men, and then try to see what the residents want.
Yes. This is not.
But I don't think that ULI is gonna do that.
So would,
And actually, you might be able to get a very nice little study done from Thunderbird.
Right.
I mean, it may or may not cost you
Planning
any
kind of
money, but they, students like to do real projects, and they come up with some pretty exciting ideas.
so I was where you were when they first brought it up. I was like, okay, when the ULI came in and said, hey, we'll do this, and I'm like, I don't know, it just seems like it's you guys kind of grab some information.
If they really wanna do it, then let's bring them in at the next meeting in September and give us a pitch.
Yeah.
But I would rather us develop this idea of having 4 straw man options and then going and traveling to town and don't just say, well, what do you want?
Exactly.
You gotta say,
Oh, no.
you want one of this, you want one of this, as Bert Bard used to tell me, you want the red one or the blue? You know, I mean, it's just that simple. Give them a choice And so I think I'd rather do that. I just think that this is, like I said before, it's like when we used to have tax conferences, you bring these old guys in, and, oh, yeah, well, hell, when I was
So-
there, we do this.
So hear me out.
To your point, I think the $10,000 could be better employed by paying a couple of interns, $2,500 or whatever it is a piece, after you've created your strongman, and say, each one of you pick one, and come back with a proposal. You know, because
And it doesn't have to be graduate students, it could be undergraduates with some really exciting
But
ideas.
there's a lot of bright kids.
Yeah, but just even facilitating little focus groups like what we're doing right now, to say, what do you want to have? That's a whole lot more valuable to doing that than having, in my judgment, I don't know all the ins and outs of what they did, but I'd rather have this conversation where a piece of data comes out like, well, we can only do 400, we have 400 seats or whatever it is for restaurant. That's what we're targeting. Because restaurant's a high payment. And then what do they like to stroll before or after shop-wise?
Right, and so that was the original idea is to get into the weeds of the true economics, right, the math. Like you start doing it, and it came down, and it came out of a lot of the conversations around events and activities. And I agree. I think the sweet spot for events is not to block the street down. It's to put events into the gardens and the pavilion. It's a 45-minute experience to an hour experience, and people could come in, they enjoy it for 45 minutes, and they go do something else. 45 minutes, and it just changes out 10 times, and next thing you know, you brought in 10,000 people, or 5,000 people, and you didn't even know it because you didn't overflow your parking. It didn't look crazy. You're not beating up the residents with parking all over the streets. Those are the things that started driving this. So how do you best, and so it comes down to how do you maximize the visitor? You want that visitor to come and get the most value and spend the most money. You don't want people coming up here kicking the tires. You want them to come here prepared to enjoy something and do
But it's
something.
within the constraints that we're operating within, which is we can't handle the parking that we get with the art festival anyway. So let's try to size something to our capacity, but that we bring in high discretion, big spenders. I mean, they're not going to be.
People were come here to spend money, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. But they're looking for probably entertainment and eating experience.
Right.
I think they also come here for art. I think the Thunderbird,
Yes.
how many Thunderbird events are there? 2 a year?
Three.
But
I'm not saying do away with those.
no, I know,
But I'm just saying that your meat and potatoes is gonna be something more consistent than that.
Right.
How long have you been here? Were you here when El Petrogal used to put
Oh,
on
yes.
the music production?
Yeah, I mean,
On
I've lived
Saturday
here
after
14 years.
KJZZ, people would
Yeah.
drive from all over the valley to go sit in that court. I did.
I've lived here 14, I've been visiting on an annual basis
And
since
they were
95.
well-known acts.
Yes.
You know, they
Yeah.
would fill the interior of that, and yet there were no parking jams
Yeah.
or anything else. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all.
Unfortunately, all that was in Scottsdale.
Yes.
Unfortunately, all that was in Scottsdale.
Well, unfortunately, that didn't translate into people going in and shopping in the shops either.
Well,
No,
that
it
was
did.
in
There were
Scottsdale.
people who were using the restaurants within.
In El Petrogal.
Yeah.
They
Oh, I used to go. That's where I found my wedding band.
But you know, if the weather's nice, you could close off.
Yeah.
You could close off part of the circle and put hundreds of seats up there, and you could have a music festival
Yeah.
underneath the sundial.
Okay, so what's next steps? I'm just always big on next steps. I like this kind of a little focus group conversation that we had here, because I think some good things came out of this. To me, anyway, insights.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of those. I'd like to see somebody being more recording of what this is and comes up with, and that could be your interns, urban planners, whatever you want to do. Let's come up with 4 straw man visions of what we want the town center to be. It's a start. And then I'd rather spend $10,000 on that and maybe when we're done with that, then we'll bring these guys in.
I agree.
Once we're more focused in.
Yeah, but we don't even,
So get ASU Architecture School involved.
Yeah,
One
don't
business
contact
school.
that institution.
And is there an urban
South of the
planning?
Gila, nobody wants any of them here.
Yeah, so
We don't need any kitties in the room.
So I'll call the University of Arizona tomorrow. and-
No, ASU, please.
Or NAU.
You even have a university down there, do you?
So, does that help you
No,
move this thing further? I mean, and our timeline is basically the end of the fiscal year, right? For the market study and for the town hall.
yeah,
Those are, the strategic plan deadline is what have you accomplished by the end of the fiscal year?
correct, yeah, so we just started the fiscal
Okay,
year
so
a week
Now
ago.
you got some things to chase in terms of resources and guidance and maybe I'd rather, you know, those guys that did the facilitation of, the fire thing? When we did the fire,
I was in,
you know who I'm talking about? Those guys I thought were pretty good in terms of facilitating.
Oh, yeah, again, the community's consensus on.
Well, not a
where to go
consensus
rural.
because we lost 80-20,
Yeah,
by
of
the way.
course.
But, but in terms of engaging people, I thought maybe there were other people like that, but to be involved, or maybe you want to do it, but to try to draw this out, and you have to go in, okay, we want one where we have a major event every month. Okay, we want one where we have 150 people 3 times a week. And we go on another one that has and.
well, I think the way to approach it is to break it into the categories of importance of things that, traffic, do you want events? I mean, we talk about events and how that impacts. We talk about the visitors and how that impacts. We can talk about the usability of the town center and how that goes. And I think if you can kind of go from, if you pick your topics, then you can get more.
Okay.
I think you can get, that's kind of what we did tonight, where we had the various different topics that we kind of touched on. And
But you want to start with the experience. The traffic is an outcome. It's not the experience.
well, it's the experience.
If you're gonna build scenarios of strongman, depending on how you want to refer to it.
Well, I'm
you
saying the
start
experience
with
of the
kind
resident, right? That lives here.
Well,
Yeah.
but you start with the experience, and then everything that comes from that.
Right.
Are things like traffic. Do we need traffic control? Don't we? How many cars do you think that might be involved?
Do we get a lot of complaints from citizens about traffic when we have these big events like Thunderbird, things like that? Is there a lot of complaint by residents?
The residents, I think, just are consigned to the fact that we have it. They don't like it. They hate the fact that they have to go get their mail and fight traffic. We try to do our best. I think we do a pretty good job of educating them how to navigate around it. The biggest complaint we get from residents, and it's a complaint from businesses, is that they can't use the town center at night because the streets are still blocked off while nobody's there. So when the streets are blocked off on that big event for Thunderbirds, the typical venues customer's not going to venues because there's no place to park.
Yes, I mean, the restaurants on venues don't like it because they actually lose their local business.
So can we just unblock the street?
Well, it
because
isn't
all
just
the
that,
tents are
it's just the crowds.
If the town hall parking lot were available for the public, then you're right around the corner from venues.
It is available to the public, but they have all the employees that have to park. They have, so by the time you park everybody, there's we only have 30 parking spaces there. It's not like this.
Well, yeah, when we built the hotel, we eliminated a lot of parking spaces.
I will say
As
from
well.
10 years
That's
plus
not
at the Chamber of Commerce volunteering an afternoon a week, the number of compliments I heard from visitors to the town about how fabulous it was to be able to come and walk around such a beautiful little town, to see such high caliber art. It really did reflect very well on the town. It really does. I know it's not great for our local businesses, but it brings people here. It brings well-heeled people here. It brings educated people here.
Is this the combined Cave Creek?
Yeah.
Effort chamber?
Yeah.
And you know my wife, she volunteers there.
Oh.
Shirley. And
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
The Cactus Garden really is the heart of this
Yes.
town center, and that
We have one more item.
everything.
We do have one more item. We have one more item on the agenda.
Yeah, I know,
We do?
the, commercial build-out update.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this really quick.
Good.
There's not
You
much,
can read the room.
Nothing else.
there's not much to update because, really not much has changed since the last time we did the whole dog and pony show with the council on the opportunities. And so one of the things that I know John brought up last time was that we'll probably get together in September. We'll start looking at what the northeast corner timeframe, start to look at. I did look at those. I projected them a year later, so I was being conservative in the projections anyhow. So the projections already account for the fact that they were gonna be a year late.
What is it? What are we looking, when are they gonna start breaking ground?
I don't have a date on that, so.
6 months from now? Sooner? I don't know.
Do they have any more committed businesses?
I think they've got what they've been talking about at this point.
Well, I also noticed that the coming soon sign is still up at Rare Earth.
Yeah, but these aren't agendized items, so I don't
I
want
know.
to get too far.
I think at some point, though, we ought to talk about a contingency plan for the northeast corner. I'm not quite as optimistic as some people that that's gonna happen.
Any other comments?
I don't know, Stacy, you didn't get a chance to chime in on any of this stuff. Why don't you stay in the next 30 minutes and tell you what you...
No, I'm not gonna be the one that's gonna drag this meeting on any longer.
Yeah,
It's,
well, this was-
all really good information and interesting thoughts. So.
Yeah, this was two meetings squished into one since we're not meeting in August, so I appreciate your guys' time.
Would, we'll entertain a motion?
I will, second.
Hearing full